Do you think silicon is clean and perfect? Or germanium has a soul that you can't fake? Well, today we're putting it to the ultimate test. We're going to find out if your ears are deceiving you or if your heart knows the true answer. Right, this is going to be a real fun one. Today we're going to see if silicon is really clean and perfect or germanium is really what you want. This is a debate that every single guitar nerd's had, but no one seems to understand or explain why they are different. I've heard people on the internet say that silicon's clean, it's perfect, it's modern, but to my ears, germanium just has this real rock to it. It has kind of a pokey mid-range that you just can't replicate with silicon. It has a kind of unpredictability about it, and it's that makes it musical. But in my experience, do I think that most people want silicon or germanium? Today we're going to find out in real time whether vintage germanium really wins over silicon. And if you want to get one of the Rangemasters that I'm using today, there's going to be 3 of them available in HelloSailorEffects.com. And remember, for the whole of November, we still have 20% off every pedal. So 20% off with code NOV20, NOV20, and you can get 20% off your purchase. Thank you for supporting the show. It really does help keep the stream alive. Back in the early 60s, when Rangemasters and fuzz faces were pretty much the only gain pedals you could get, germanium was everywhere. And the NKT275, that fabled germanium transistor that we all know and love, thanks to Analog Mike.
They've been hearing all this hype, which is not of my doing.
That transistor, that was everywhere. And it wasn't because it was the best. It wasn't because it was the most rare and exotic. I mean, you can pay over £100 each for one of them now, even ones that are out of spec. We didn't use them because of that. We used them in the guitar world because they were the cheapest and most readily available. They were probably the worst transistors that you could get, and that's why we used them. Mental, innit? Considering now, people would literally sell a child to buy one. It's mad. They were inconsistent. They changed with their environment, i.e. temperature, moisture, all of that sort of stuff affects it. The stories of Eric Johnson putting his fuzz faces in a fridge or the freezer before a gig to keep them cold, so then when he got on stage, they sounded the way he wanted. It's mad. It's mental, but we all engage in this. And if you don't engage in this and you think, no, I prefer modern components or I prefer silicon, please let me know in the comments why. I'm really interested. But it's got to be said that people like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, all the greats, they all at some point in their time used the germanium Rangemaster or the germanium fuzz face or some sort of germanium pedal. And why is that? Is it because they were readily available? Or is it because there was a certain sound to them, a certain frequency that made them sit in the mix well? Silicon arrived much later. Now, engineers really like silicon because, let's face it, they were invented for things like hospital equipment, ships, war, military, all this stuff, televisions. It was invented for consistency, not because it sounded good. So engineers loved them. Musicians, not so much. In my experience though, musicians should love them because they offer a kind of 70s aggressiveness, like a sharp edge, that really does sound great. I mean, it's hard to understand why people would want to go germanium when silicon sounds so great. So let's break it down and see what I think the differences are between silicon and germanium on a base level. So germanium first. I feel like germanium transistors naturally sag under load. They have leakage, they change with temperature in their environment. They're pretty much more a living, breathing thing as opposed to a constant entity like silicon. The mids are kind of smooth. They're not sharp, they're not aggressive, they're not distorted. It's kind of like a smooth squawk is the best way I can describe it. They respond to your picking dynamic much more. If you dig in, the note jumps out and shouts at you. And if you back off, it's much more polite and kind of civilized. Now silicon on the other hand, it's tight, it's controlled, it's aggressive, it's got a sharp edge to the mids like I said, and it's kind of got that mid-70s punch that you would expect. Now in my experience, I think most people would buy a pedal with their heart and say that they want germanium. But actually, if I side by side the two, without them knowing, they're going to pick the silicon. Now, I know that thought's going to be unpopular, and loads of people are going to write in the comments telling me I don't know what I'm doing. Or maybe you're not. Let's find out. I personally like both. And I'm going to show you a little trick at the end of this video so you can get the most out of your Rangemaster pedals. Without opening a can of worms, I just want to touch on NPN versus PNP. So for those of you who are like engineering minded, it's basically polarity of a transistor. You have NPN or PNP. PNP come first and NPN come second. If you ever wondered why some vintage pedals take a positive ground supply, this is it. The PNP generally in something like a fuzz face or a Rangemaster would take a positive ground supply. This is why most builders will mark up on their pedals saying do not apply a negative ground supply to this and all that sort of stuff. For me, it just makes it awkward. I don't want to be able to mess about with reverse polarity supplies on my pedal board. My pedal board's already too complicated. I'm not one of them guys that just plugs pedals on the floor with a battery. But if you want a battery powered pedal, fine. You can crack on and use positive ground. For me, in my Rangemasters, I use a little bit of electricity, and it's not a voltage inverter before someone writes in the comments, but I use some electricity so that I can use a PNP transistor inside a negative ground supply. So when you buy a Rangemaster from me, you don't have to fiddle about with the power supplies, and that is crucial. Do I think NPN sounds different to PNP? In a Rangemaster, it really does. Even wiring things up the same, I still think that a PNP has a certain sound to it. I don't know why. I can't explain it electrically. If someone in the comments can explain why PNP sounds different to NPN, I'd be interested to hear. Or maybe even have you on the Pedal Dive podcast for the debate. That'd be fantastic. I do think though, I know lots of people in the comments are going to shoot me down for this. There's something about a PNP transistor, silicon or germanium, that sounds much better in a Rangemaster than an NPN. It just does. Here's something that you don't hear enough when we're talking about silicon versus germanium and famous artists. We always hear about Brian May, Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, either sticking with germanium or silicon or changing between the two later in their careers. We always hear about that. But let's look at some guitarists that you may not have heard about. And let's face it, I know you will have heard of these guitarists. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you won't have heard about what type of pedal they use maybe. And if you have or haven't, let me know in the comments. And the first one is David Bowie's guitarist, Mick Ronson. During that Ziggy era, Mick made a Rangemaster with a germanium transistor sound like a buzzsaw dipped in honey. And of course he had that iconic Les Paul, the strip Les Paul custom. It just looked so cool. His rig was the classic Les Paul into a Rangemaster and into an absolute stack of Marshalls. That's it. And his tone is still relevant today with that classic formula. Then you've got one of my personal favourites, Rory Gallagher. He had a battered old Rangemaster that he used in the early days. And during his gig, it would warm up, it would get hotter, and the sound would change throughout the gig. Now, before anyone says it, I know he's most famed for using the Hawk booster. And I've got one here, or a Flynn Amps recreation. I absolutely love this thing. It takes 2 batteries, so it's 18 volt. It has inductors for the tone circuit. It's amazing. I'm going to be doing a video about this pedal and a DIY build myself. Also, my buddy Argem from Boondock Effects is going to be helping me out. He's going to be making one as well in a cool, different manner. Let me know in the comments if that's what you want to see, or maybe if there's something else you want to see. But now back to Rory Gallagher's tone. That inconsistency, that sort of stabbiness towards the end of his gig, that was just all part of it. That's what made his notes spit, growl and bloom. Of course it was his picking technique and whatever, but combined with the Rangemaster and the germanium heating up, that just gave him some sort of superhuman strength. Now onto the silicon side of the debate, and people forget Robert Fripp and his King Crimson tone. That precise icy sustain. If you get a silicon fuzz that can keep up with his precision and his accuracy, that was his thing. Because he used silicon transistors in his tone, he had an aggression without losing any of that definition. And here's a weird one. Kevin Shields from My Bloody Valentine. Bet you didn't think I was going to say that, did you? People call his sound warm. But really what I say is, his sound has a lot of texture because he's using a silicon fuzz and battering it with a tremolo arm. It had like a glide guitar-y whoosh to his tone. Silicon can handle that sort of abuse whereas germanium would just kind of melt into a puddle of mess. So yeah, as you can see, whether it's germanium bloom or silicon bite, there's other artists, not just the mainstream ones, that made whole genres with these sorts of components. Sometimes it's the fringe guys or the weirdos who squeeze the most out of this sort of stuff. Let's bust the myth. Does a Germanium Rangemaster have to be first in the signal chain? Really? Mostly yes. Classic Rangemasters are tuned to be able to see the impedance of your guitar's pickups. You don't have to know what that means. All you have to think about it is, if I'm a Germanium Rangemaster, I like to see a guitar first. I don't want a buffer in front of me. I don't want a boost in front of me. I don't want a compressor. All I want to see is a cable straight into your guitar. The reason for this is there's a kind of relationship between a transistor and your guitar's pickups. It's kind of like a symbiotic relationship. Your pickups and your germanium transistor kind of push and pull each other in certain ways as you're digging in. And that fight between them is something really special. And if you put something like a buffer in the way or something like that, it's almost like the Germanium Rangemaster can't talk to your pickups, so there's no give and take and you lose what's special about it. If you put the Germanium Rangemaster first in your signal chain, it'll react better to your guitar's volume. So you can have everything set the way that you like for your gain tone, your lead tone, and then you can back off a little bit for maybe an overdrive-y type tone, and you can back off some more for a clean tone. It's just a beautiful thing to do. You never have to stamp on a pedal again. You could just use your guitar's volume for all these different colours. And I was playing guitar for maybe 10, 15 years before I even touched the volume knob. I'm so guilty of not touching the knobs on my guitar. Oh man. But when I did start messing with that, it just opened up a whole plethora of tones. Now there are some exceptions to the rule. Some of my customers have bought Rangemasters and put them in the middle of their massive rigs and really like the tone of it. So who am I to say? Now there are ways that you can mitigate this talking relationship between your pickups and your germanium transistor. And we do this with something called a pickup simulator. Every company does a pickup simulator now. The one I use was given to me, or the circuit was given to me, by my good friend Stu from Tate Effects. He was talking to me about the way that I was designing it, and I was kind of on the right path, but using the wrong values and the wrong transformer. So a pickup simulator, what we do is we use a transformer and we wire it up like an inductor. What does that mean? It means that we're basically using only half of the transformer. So it's kind of like your wire attaches to a coil that is wrapped round a magnet, and then it comes out the other side. And what that does, it simulates the impedance of your guitar's pickups. And if it simulates the impedance of your guitar's pickups and it's put right before the germanium transistor, it means that whatever comes before it doesn't matter. Well, it does, but to a certain extent, it doesn't matter because your germanium transistor is having that chat, that relationship with the right impedance. Now, I don't put this in all of my Germanium Rangemasters, but I do from time to time make ones that have transformers in it. I call it an input transformer circuit, and it's really hard to explain what else it does to the sound. It doesn't just create that relationship, it kind of mellows out the tone. It makes it just that little bit different. You can modify these to try and mitigate that mellowing effect, but it's always there to my ears. I'd love to know if any of you own Germanium Rangemasters, Germanium Fuzz Facers, or any other pedal that has a pickup simulator in. Let me know in the comments. So what's the difference between a Rangemaster with a transformer in it and a Rangemaster that doesn't have a transformer in it? Well, today we're going to find out. This half is a Germanium Rangemaster, no transformer. This half's a silicon Rangemaster with no transformer. This here is a Germanium Rangemaster with an input transformer that's controlled on this control here. It's very similar to the gain control on this, so it should be a dating test. These also have the same NKT military spec version of the NKT275 germanium transistor in. So it's the same transistor, the same circuit, same capacitance, everything's the same. And we'll just get to see now using the TC wire tap, which obviously isn't the same impedance as a guitar's pickup. So because it's not the same impedance as a guitar's pickup, it should really mess with this. So let's see how they sound. As a little side note, I'm going to have 3 of these Rangemasters also available in my store. We of course went with the Beano Dennis the Menace artwork, and these have an input transformer along with some very old capacitors and other accoutrements if you want to grab these, there's still a 20% sale off everything in my website. So there'll be 3 of these to go along with the 3 Dual Rangemasters. Thank you for supporting the show, and buying pedals from me really does help keep this dream alive. Here's my clean tone. What you're hearing now is the Mimic 2 delay and also some reverb from the polyverbs going into the front of my Victory V40 amplifier. So let's try the version without the transformer. Now you hear that's quite stabby. Yeah, now the version with the transformer. It's much more vocal than how a Rangemaster should sound. Hear that hard edge to it? What happens if we flick it into a bit of a fatter send? Maybe that dials it out. Bearing in mind that these are both the same capacitors. It's still got the hard higher edge to it. And that sounds much more natural. It's got like a kind of walk to it, if that makes sense. What happens if we go to the fatter setting? Oh man, it's still a stab in the ear hole from this side. And this side? Now that's a full range fat boost. Now, you may say, Joe, but surely you can affect the gain control, which will help affect this because it'll, it's on the input maybe. And true. Let's try and adjust it. So if we put this at 12 o'clock and we put this at 12 o'clock, what we're doing is controlling on this one the amount of transformer, if you like, or inductor, whatever, into the circuit. And on this one, this is kind of like a variable resistor input, kind of like the analog man Sunface does on the board internally. So let's get our clean tone. That's it. Let's get some lead lines. That sounds much more doable to me. Now let's see what it sounds like on the other one. Much more natural. Now let's go to the trebly position. I actually quite like that, if I'm being honest. I would probably prefer with this rolled back. I think I prefer... I don't know. It's close, but I don't dislike the sound of this one. Now let's hear what it sounds like when we use an overdrive going into the front of our Rangemasters. First of all, we're going to have the version without a transformer, and then we're going to have the version with a transformer. For this, I'm using my Kossoff drive. Now, I've had a few people comment on this particular Kossoff drive to say that it looks like one of them cheap Chinese clones, and it does, because I've nicked the enclosure off one and changed it into my own design, nitrocellulose lacquered over the top of it and whatnot. And just to prove that, I do have the back off here. We can see that there's a big whack and tag board inside with some vintage components. So it's not exactly a Chinese clone. I've got them Chinese clones because I feel like I'm going to make a video about them and do some sort of build video, like a beginner video. Anyway, let's get to this. And now actually, the sounds that you're hearing now on my TC electronic wiretap is actually my buddy Todd from the Guitar Knobs podcast. He was over in the UK, he stayed over here for a week with me, and he let me record and play him while we were fine-tuning a Rangemaster. So this is Todd. And now the Kossoff drive with everything at 2 o'clock. Brutal. And now let's add in the stabby Rangemaster. You can hear that high-end sizzle. Now you may like that. I mean, I know people who do. Let's dial this back a bit. 12 o'clock like we had before on the pre-game. It's still a bit stabby to me, so let's take it down to 9. And of course, now you're losing volume. Remember, that's the tone of the Kossoff motor. Now let's see what it's like when we add in a transformer into the mix. So let's get the awesome tones of Todd up. And now the Kossoff drive with everything at 2 o'clock. And a Rangemaster. It sounds much fuller, much raucous, more... I can't explain it. It sounds more vintage, if you like. Let's dial it back and see what we get. So so dialing it back when we're using a transformer just adds some clarity. And of course we lose some volume back here, because that's what it would be like in the first place. But albeit it's great, even if I up the output on this and dial back the gain, so on its own, that's with the output all the way up, treble up, and the gain right the way down. Remember, that's our clean tone. Maybe we should have the gain up a bit. There. Now let's add in the... Oh man, listen to that. It just sounds awesome. Now, the question is, would you like to see me stack all three Rangemasters together? So we could have a Germanium at the beginning, then a silicon, and then a Germanium with a transformer right at the end. Stick around to the end of this video in a sound sample, and I'm going to maybe, quite possibly, do the unthinkable and stack three Rangemasters together. If one's good, two's better, and three must be for the win. So how are we going to test Germanium versus silicon? Well, today I'm going to be using this. It's a Germanium Rangemaster on one side and a silicon Rangemaster on the other. You'll notice there's two controls each. That's because they have a gain control and a boost control, which you don't normally find on Rangemasters, but why not? And also they've got a switch to select between three different EQs. In the center position, it's the normal Rangemaster treble booster. Doesn't actually boost treble. It kind of boosts the upper mids and cuts a bit of treble, but whatever. So in the middle position is a normal Rangemaster. In the up position, we have a mid boost, so it brings in that lower mid growl that I love personally. And then in the lower position, it gives a full range boost, so that's every frequency boosted. Stick around to the end of the demo and I'm going to show you a little trick with my Rangemaster pedals that absolutely opens up the tone. It's the best Rangemaster tone ever. Thank you for watching this channel. It really does mean a lot to me. And remember, if you want one of these pedals, there's going to be 3 of them available over at hellosailoreffects.com, and we do have a 20% sale on whole of November. So for the whole of this month, use code NOV20, NOV20, and you'll get 20% off your whole order. Thank you for buying pedals. It is really what keeps this dream alive. Okay, so in this part of the video, you're going to hear a P90 guitar, a humbucker guitar, a single coil guitar, and then something special, all played through both sides of this pedal, so you can hear exactly how it reacts. Here's my clean tone. Germanium. Oh yeah. And now humbuckers, here's my clean tone. Now let's hear that super special trick. It is of course combining a germanium Rangemaster into the front of a silicon Rangemaster. It changes the treble booster into kind of a fuzz. It's insane. It's much better than something like a muff because it cuts through the mix, but it still has that syrupy, thick tone that you just don't get from a fuzz face or something like that. I think you're going to like this one. Okay, so this is the unthinkable that I mentioned earlier in the video. We're going to stack a germanium Rangemaster, a silicon Rangemaster, and then a Rangemaster with a transformer in the front of it. Let's see what we got. There you go. And now germanium. Quite stabby because we've got no transformer in there. So I'm going to back that off a little bit just to take that stab out of it. Now, let's add the silicon. Oh my God. We'll have to drop the boost and the pre there, and maybe that's a bit better. Fatten it all up with the EQ on the first one. Now let's add the last Rangemaster. Oh, that just makes it all sound great. Actually like it there. Ah, is that the best fuzz ever? Let's get some lead tones on the go. Oh man, listen to that. So there it is, germanium versus silicon. For me, germanium has the soul and silicon has the bite and the aggression. Both have their place. But I would say that most people are probably going to skew between one or the other. Just to let me know that you've watched all the way through this video, let me know which you prefer. Do you prefer silicon or germanium? What's on your board? And also tell me why. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you like this video, you're going to love this video.